Hi there. So, a couple of weeks ago, I asked you guys to make the best render you possibly could on the theme of space for a chance to win an RTX 3090 Ti. You guys really came through, both in terms of quantity and quality of submissions. I was absolutely blown away, A, by how many submissions I got to this thing, and secondly, by just how good so many of them were. I actually started off with a short list, which ended up with 40 entries. I managed to whittle that down to 20 entries, and I sat down earlier on with Curtis Holt to pick out a winner. Michael Bridges also joined us about halfway through the judging. Now, even though he missed the first few submissions, the decision on the actual winner was pretty unanimous, so it wouldn't have made a difference to the final winner. I've decided to leave the entire recording of the judging session pretty much as it was, with very few cuts. I want people to actually hear the feedback about what we were saying about each one of the renders. So here you have it. Here's the entire judging session that we sat down to earlier. Right, so this first entry, it's like a loop, which I thought was quite interesting.
Nice. Okay, that's the SpaceX suit as well, right?
It is, yeah, that's the SpaceX suit, and it's like a skate theme park, and obviously it's actually Mars in the background, which I think is a nice touch.
Yeah, I quite like that.
Yeah, this one's obviously really short, but I just thought the execution was really nice. The composition's pretty good on it.
The depth of field is quite strong, but yeah, I quite like the idea as well. I like that it's an infinite loop kind of like it's pretty.
I did think that the depth of field was quite strong as well, considering when you're shooting things at that sort of scale, you wouldn't normally get that much of a depth of field effect. But I suppose it does kind of isolate like the front of the composition, which is the important thing.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I suppose it's important to keep in mind like the balance of what you're seeing throughout the entire video, because I guess most of the time we're looking at the background there. So maybe it shouldn't be as kind of out of focus because we're spending so much time with it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. The next one I've kind of put a still and then a video and then a still. Not all the way through, but for the start of it. So the next one's just a still, and it's this, which I thought was pretty cool. I like that it's got the like procedural sort of Greeble thing going on, and it's got a really good like the contrast. I really like. It reminds us of you know, when you see those like huge epic space renders.
Yes.
You know, like the massive machinery and things like that, and you really get a sense of scale. I thought it was very good for that.
Yeah, there's a definite kind of lighting that you see in a lot of those colossal renders that you're describing, and they've got it done pretty well here, especially with the bloom as well. Like I've seen like certain tutorials that are just dedicated to getting that type of space bloom, they call it.
Yeah,
and I've definitely used that as well.
Yeah,
they've got that quite right.
Yeah, it's tricky to really nail this look. Like at first, I glanced at this and I thought, oh, it's quite a simple render, but then I've played around with this sort of stuff before, and it is actually really quite difficult to get something that doesn't just look like an object being presented, if you know what I mean, to make it look like it's this huge thing in space. So I thought that one was interesting, so that definitely made the shortlist. I really like that one. I mean, it fits with my channel for a start because it's a movie recreation, which I obviously do a lot of anyway, and that's really really well done. Like everything, there's a lot of little subtle things in there, like the little sort of warp bubble thing as the ship appears at the start. It's really subtle, but it does this sort of warp effect. And then I thought the plant looks really good as well. and the effect of the ship hitting the atmosphere. I thought that was great. That's a really strong one for me. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I like that. It definitely had the Star Wars element to the kind of cinematography at the beginning there,
Yeah,
because even with the music, it was very like John Williams-esque. But like, it's kind of
yeah,
turning, seeing the atmosphere, something breaking off and going to the planet. Like, yeah, it definitely felt like something out of a Star Wars series. But did that kind of get like a bit Predator at the end, like with that music and
yeah.
the like?
That's what that was. I'm pretty sure that's a recreation of the start of Predator.
Yeah,
Like
interesting.
that's the opening shot. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
But
nice. Yeah.
let me check. I've got notes on this. I think. Yeah, it is. That's like a shot for shot recreation of the start.
Ah, nice. See, I knew
But
I'd recognize that sound.
yeah. So like I said, it's kind of in keeping with what I do on my channel as well, which I like. That's uh that's just a bonus thing though. You didn't know that wasn't like a goal, but it's nice that people are
Yeah.
doing stuff like that. But yeah, that's a really strong contender for me. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a strong contender, even just down to like the pacing and stuff. It definitely felt quite cinematic. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah, they locked that down. When I first saw this animation, I tried to avoid looking at any of these entries as much as I could until I came to judge them. But I did just look at one or two, and I saw that one. I was like, okay, that's the winner. But then I saw, but then I saw a few of the others coming through, and I'm like, oh, actually,
Yeah, yeah.
there's some good competition here. But when I first saw that, I thought, okay, that's probably the winner. But
Nice.
let's take a look at the others. Okay, so the next one's just a still again. This guy actually submitted like four different sort of beauty shots of this scene, but I thought this was the best one. I just picked one of them, and I thought this was the best one to really show off like the quality of the modeling and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought this one was really nice.
Hey, okay, I'm just taking a minute to give this a good look over. It's definitely a piece you can tell that a fair amount of compositing has been done over the top of it.
Yeah.
Um, like I think for doing good renders, a certain amount of compositing is definitely essential for getting it like looking like taking it to the end, you know.
Hmm.
I love it. But like I can't exactly tell exactly what it's supposed to be. Not that I'm supposed to know, to be honest, because like what the hell do spaceships or like space vehicles look like in reality? We don't know. We've only seen human stuff. But I love the look of it. Like I think it's very well made, very thematic. You know,
Yeah.
um, it's cool.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a cool design, but it does kind of suffer from that thing that can happen with spaceships and stuff where it's like I don't really understand what any of these parts are supposed to be. Like they
Yeah,
look cool, but I don't understand what these little greebly bits actually do, which is it's hard to convey, especially if it's a made up device. It's really hard to convey like, okay, this part is obviously the inlets or whatever, or this is the exhaust, or this is a
yeah,
mechanical joint, unless it's obviously that thing. That is quite hard to do. But the quality of the model on this is really nice. It's got that nice mix of like hard surface, but also with plenty of curves,
yes,
which a lot of
yeah.
people really shy away from when especially when they start doing hard surface modeling. Everything's just incredibly boxy because people don't want to tackle like the weird curve shapes that make you want to kill yourself. So it's nice that it's got a lot of those thrown in there as well, especially on these like bottom parts. You've got all the panels going in different directions.
That's true. Even down to like some of the material details, there's like a nice variety going on there as well. Even just like the little things, like the kind of red and black hazard stripes going along some of the larger shapes. I like all the finer details, but yeah, as you say, it's kind of hard to know. Like without speaking to the artist, it's
Hmm.
difficult to know whether there was like a lot of thought that went into every single part of the shape. Like
Yeah,
maybe like all of them have very specific functional purposes, but like we can't necessarily tell that just from having a look at it. So yeah, like as an art piece, I really, really like it. But yeah, a few things to think about.
yeah. Okay, well, I'll move on to the next one. Uh, that one, that one's obviously very short. I'll go back to a random frame from it. This one's obviously very short, but I liked how like abrupt it was.
Yeah,
Like like some of the modeling it probably isn't as strong compared to like say the last piece. But I do like the materials on this planet though. This lava thing going on, but I just like the fact that it was kind of like very nicely balanced. Where it's like you think it's going to be a peaceful space render thing, and then all of a sudden it's like this thing comes screeching in with what sounded like a Star Wars sound effect. It sounded like a
Yeah,
TIE fighter or
exactly.
something like that. But yeah, I thought that one was nice. It was worth a mention.
Yeah. Well, what I'm feeling watching these animations is that these people are paying quite a lot of attention to the sound in these as well,
Yeah.
because it actually sounded, like you could replace that render with all different variations and just keep the same sound. It would fit very well. Like, even with like a hyper realistic render, I still think that sound would apply. So I feel like they have paid quite a lot of attention to like what do you call it, like the general continuity of all the elements working together.
Hmm.
But yeah, as you said, like the modeling and the general visuals could be improved. I like the material, but you can see it's kind of a bit low quality,
Hmm.
almost like kind of blurred pixels there on the surface a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice. It's a really nice effort.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this was the next one. I thought this was a really cool, like, cinematic shot. It's one of those things where it's almost a shame that this wasn't like an animation. I really love
Right.
the sense of depth that you get on the clouds. I don't
Yeah.
know how that's been done. I don't know if that's volumetrics or probably displacement, but I think that looks really cool. I like the composition where it's kind of framed by both of these. They look like probably space elevators, like doing a really nice job of framing the scene and bringing the focus in the middle. And that's obviously on the rule of thirds as well. This one that's kind of just dangling off in the distance.
Yes, this is a very, very good frame. It could absolutely be taken out of a modern film. Like, yeah, I mean, I am noticing some kind of elements in there. Okay, so like the greebles on the left here, fairly similar to like a lot of greebling we see, in a lot of science fiction artwork nowadays. Especially with, I guess, in Blender, there's a lot of tools like Random Flow, which have been coming out recently, just
Mm.
specifically for doing this kind of thing. But putting that aside, like the kind of distribution of scales on the shapes, like for the structure on the right there, we can at least see some kind of more simpler surfaces. And I like that with space structures. Kind of feels a bit more realistic when you've got some nice kind of areas to rest your eyes. But yeah, like the planet especially looks fantastic with like this kind of what I'm assuming is like a kind of hurricane system kind of building up there. Like the clouds look amazing. So I kind of wonder how much is done kind of post kind of rendering with this. I imagine this may be like a composition of a few different pieces. But yeah, it's a really, really cool shot. Like I could absolutely see this kind of coming from a longer animation in a modern film. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly what I thought. It reminds me a lot of very modern sci-fi movies. That's it. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it looks like. This looks like it could be a screenshot from like a brand new blockbuster. I agree with what you said about the greebling, especially on this part on the left, where even though it's out of focus and in shadow, it is very close to the camera, and it looks a little bit just sort of here's some random boxes. Which I mean, it is hard to actually design something like that that makes sense or that looks like it serves a purpose. But you're right. Sometimes it's best just to kind of leave that off, or to just have like a space door or whatever, and then have a little bit of paneling around it, and that's it. You don't necessarily always have to have everything really cluttered just because it's sci-fi.
Yeah, true. And I'm even looking at like at the top of that left structure there. There's like a kind of like small satellite dish, the kind of thing that you'd use to get like TV on homes. And I'm
Yeah.
just looking at that, thinking, with futuristic massive structures like this, do you really think there might be just like a tiny little dish strapped onto the side somewhere to pick up signals? There's probably something much more complex going on for communication or whatever. So yeah, there's just little things like that which keep in mind.
Okay, so if I zoom along, yeah, oh, okay, so this one I really like as well, this next one.
Living in a strange situation of too much talk and no communication.
Sit down quickly, catch the vibe, open up and enjoy the ride. No news today, communication is the way. Let's talk about it, a serious business, and I'll betcha you'll dismiss it. If life is a situation of too much talk, no communication.
Living in a strange situation of too
nice.
Now that one I liked a lot. I think that it's a really good balance of like a good idea and really good execution. And the
Yeah.
amount of work that went into that must have been absolutely crazy. Bear in mind, like they only had 2 weeks to do this. And like it's just shot after shot after shot. And you keep thinking like, okay, it's gonna end now. And then it's like, oh, here's another shot. And then it like completely just changes and it goes to the actual space part. And it's funny as well. That's really funny.
Yeah, I really like that one because what I think separates that one from some of the previous entries we've seen is this one felt more like a whole package. Like this person should definitely try doing music videos, unless they already do. I don't know, but like it seems like that kind of thing. It always keeps you on your toes mentally, like
Yeah.
because something's always changing, and it does keep the space theme. It's a little bit kind of it's mixed in with human culture. I quite like that. We've got our kind of what looks like almost photogrammetry or lidar scanned like subway carriages. I like this kind of mixed element. Yeah, I wonder like when thinking about story whether there is any like kind of like actual story behind it, or whether it's just that random stuff has been slapped together for the sake of being interesting. But
Yeah.
I do like it. Like it's a fun one.
Yeah, it's really fun. The cloth simulation as well. That looks really good. I assume that's probably done with Marvelous Designer, which
Yeah,
it's
possibly.
it's definitely better than Blender, but I've used Marvelous a lot and it's ambitious to when you know you're on a tight deadline to be like, I'm gonna do cloth that I don't really need to do because
Yeah,
it can take a lot of fiddling around with. And I noticed at one point there's a part where the alien like clips the clothing with its fingers, which is something that Marvelous Designer hates. 90% of the time, the finger goes through the cloth, and then the whole animation gets messed up. But that doesn't happen here. It just like accurately brushes off the cloth, and I thought it was really well done.
all right, nice, very nice.
So that's definitely a strong contender for me.
Yeah, same, good one.
It's, this next one is just a still, but I thought this was really cute. I thought this was funny, and it's really cute. It's
Yeah,
like this octopus in a spacesuit. It's only got 6 tentacles for some reason though. And, but yeah, I thought this was nice, and you can't see here probably very well, but there's the material on this sort of mylar or whatever this spacesuit is really nice. In fact, all the materials, apart from maybe the flags are a little bit plasticky, but all of the other materials on this I thought looked pretty good, like on the actual character and things.
mm. Yeah, I do quite like that. I like that there's like water in the kind of fishbowl helmet as well, just like
Yeah,
those little kind of details and the flag. Yeah, this is a characterful piece, I
yeah,
would say. So quite a nice idea. But I just wondered, like maybe the terrain looks a little bit barren or semi, which I guess is kind of normal for a moon, or like some kind of surface like that. But um, yeah,
yeah.
I kind of feel like maybe there's something missing, but I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, I agree. A few rocks or something probably would have went pretty far since a lot of this composition is made up of the foreground. Like, I know it
Yeah,
doesn't look like very much, but when you've got like that's basically what a fifth or something of the screen that's just completely blank. It might have been better just to get rid of that entirely and use like a widescreen format, or like to
yeah,
rebalance the composition a little bit some other way. I do like the sort of storytelling element, the implication that like they're going to replace the American flag with this one with this octopus flag. Um, but yeah, I thought that was cute. I thought that was definitely worth the top 20.
yeah. Like speaking of that kind of idea of the story, I wonder if maybe even if the ground was brightened a bit, so you get a bit of that kind of bloom going on, because like the moon surface is very reflective, and you get quite a bit of that bloom. But also just having like some of the footprints leading up to the American flag, because they would have been there from like the Armstrong and Aldrin kind of spacewalks. So
Yeah,
maybe that would just add a bit more of that character there, because it kind of makes it seem like, oh yeah, people were actually here, and oh no, here comes this octopus about to kind of ruin the legacy.
yeah, that's a really good point. Some footprints would be probably the perfect thing to balance out that foreground, and maybe having a tentacle actually reaching for the American flag or something as well, so you can see that they are going to yank it down. Assuming that's the
Yeah.
implication of what's happening there.
We might be reading it wrong. It might just be
Yeah.
like a really friendly octopus that's going to put it next to the
Put
American
it, put it
flag.
next to the American flag. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I like it though.
Yeah.
All right, interesting.
Yeah, that's the longest animation we got, I think. That one goes on for quite a while. Which once again, considering how short it is, it's quite impressive that people even managed to do any sort of animation. Never mind quite a lengthy one.
Yeah, that's true.
I liked how cinematic a lot of those shots were. Like the compositions was often really good. I thought the sound design was really good. Like that piece of music works very well with it. It matches great. There's a few weird choices in there for me. The fact that the planet's spinning so fast compared to the shot of the satellite coming in, it means like, okay, so is the satellite actually going really slow, and the planet's moving normal speed, but this has been sped up, or is the planet moving really really fast? Like, what's going on here? I like the touch of having the all the lights come on as it goes into the shade. You can see all the countries light up. I assume they're probably like a normal Terminator effect thing for that, but that looked really good. And yeah, the pacing was a little bit slow. Like that was kind of why it was a little bit jarring for me. I think it's because it's quite a slow paced animation, but then you've got this like what looks like a time lapse of Earth. And the only other thing I thought was a little bit strange was when you have that the shadow that goes over Jupiter, which looks really cool. It was like really ominous or whatever, but then it just suddenly stops. Like it's coming in quite
yeah.
quick as well, and then it just kind of stopped. I thought like it froze or something at first when I saw that, but yeah, I thought that was definitely a cool one.
Yeah, same. I agree with like most of those points, well, all of those points. But even with that last Jupiter shot, I kind of felt like the spacecraft was kind of like closer to the camera, so it felt a little bit weird when like this massive shadow suddenly appeared over Jupiter, which I felt was like much further behind. I was like, oh, okay, well, is this supposed to be like a really large spaceship that was like kind of somewhere else? It was a bit weird, kind of like place things mentally, and also like with that first shot with Earth kind of spinning around, which was very nice, but even things like the background, some of the nebulaic details are moving quite quickly, which just wouldn't really happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly what you're saying about like the kind of the spinning speed. But when you're making animations in Blender, it's very difficult to try and actually like properly visualize how long they'll be in a continuity with the other animated shots.
Yeah.
So I think this is less actually like an animation problem, more like an editing problem as well. So like I really admire the ambition behind it, and like as you say, within that time frame, trying to make like that many animations and put them together. But like maybe like a bit more trimming down and just some thought about like when things should cut off would have probably helped that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I really agree. That's like the biggest problem I have when I'm making an original animation is always like putting it together in the edit and render out these shots. And 90% of the time, I end up trimming things down. I'll go like, oh, I'll do from frame 200 to 700 or whatever. The first thing I do is go, okay, just get rid of the first 150 frames. Because
Yeah.
when you put it together in the context of everything else, you realize like, oh, this is actually just this is unnecessary.
Yeah, true. That's also why I use like a linear interpolation for a lot of my animations because I don't know exactly where it's going to trim down. So like if the camera is moving, for example, I always want it to be a consistent speed. So like you don't want to trim it to a point where it's actually like starting to speed up or slow down because it might just look a bit weird in comparison to other places. But yeah, just some things to keep in mind, I suppose, for
Yeah,
the person that made this.
I've made that mistake before of having like a ramp up and ramp out of the speed, and every shot does that, and it looks really bizarre that every single time it cuts through a new shot, the camera starts to move.
Yeah.
Sometimes what I do to get away from that is I'll have the start and end point for the camera animation be before and after. So it is
Yeah.
ramping up, but it's much more gradually because it's already had 20 frames or whatever of like getting into it first.
Yeah,
But
true.
yeah, I suffer from the same problem, so I can definitely I can appreciate that. Okay, so the next one, this is another still. This one's probably the most basic, like to actually make the final cut. But I just thought this was like a really beautiful shot. The colors on this is spectacular. I really like the composition. I love this sort of gas cloud nebula thing.
Yeah, I really like this. I've actually seen this as a bit of a trend because I've seen some other planetary renders like this where they have, this very bright and kind of colorful volumetric-ish thing, nebulaic thing coming off of the planet. It does look lovely. What I would say is probably for this image, it would probably benefit from more volumetric or three-dimensional clouds because at this angle we're quite steep, kind of looking at the planet, so it looks a bit odd that they're, kind of flat there. But yeah, overall, it's very nice to look at.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly what I was gonna say. You can see where there's a shadow that follows the same shape, so it obviously is a three-dimensional element, but it's like flat, if you know what I mean. It's separate from the planet, but it has no like depth to it, which is a shame because
Yeah,
the material on the planet actually looks really good. Like it's very detailed. This is one of the few shots that was submitted, which surprised us. That was actually like very close up on a planet. There was one or two more, but there wasn't loads of them. I expected a lot of renders like this, but this is pretty much the only one. Especially after Andrew Price did a tutorial. I think while the submission period was still open, he did a tutorial on like really close up planets, and I thought, oh well, that's just going to be every entry. But actually, I don't think I got one that was identical to his tutorial.
all right, nice. Yeah,
In
props to
fact,
the participants.
the closest one to his tutorial was actually the video that I made for the space thing.
Ah,
I had a close up
right,
shot in
okay.
there, and I pretty much did. I mean, it's the same thing. We've all done a million times for planets, to be fair. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'll move on to the next one. But I thought that was definitely worth a mention because it's really nice colors on this. That's mostly what struck me
Yes.
straight away. This is just really nice colors.
Yeah, it seems like it's been color graded.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
definitely.
it.
It's a shame that that one doesn't have sound for a start.
Mm,
If you've got an animation, especially something that's really dynamic, when you've got lasers shooting and things being crashed into and all the rest of it, you lose so much impact straight away just by not having any sounds there. Sounds like
true.
such an important part of storytelling, at least the music. But when it's something like this where you've got elements interacting, you need to hear that. But I really like the
Yeah.
colors on this one. Again, I thought they look great. Like I like the obviously it's very overdone, like the orange and teal look, but it works here really well. Like it's hard to do space because everything's just black. You know, like sometimes it's such a boring background, so it's fair enough just to go, you know what, space is blue now. Space is for this composition. Space is blue because it's going to look more interesting. It's obviously very stylized anyway, so why not?
Yeah, I agree. I quite like the idea. It reminds me of that one we liked with the aliens dancing in the subway stations, just in the way that it's got this kind of funky surrealist vibe to it.
Yeah.
So just for, you know, the sake of stepping aside from traditional space ideas, I think it deserves some points. But yeah, as you say, like some sound effects would have been really nice on this one. And it kind of reminds me, like, I watch a lot of music videos, and a lot of these kind of really high production ones from super popular artists, they have like so much going on in terms of like graphics. But if you're just watching them as a music video, like there'll be explosions and you won't hear anything because it's just the music playing. And that would always like ticks me off a little bit. I mean, I know it's supposed to be just like the music for a music video, but seeing so many things going on and not hearing it just is a little bit jarring. So yeah, kind of applying the same idea here. It would be nice just to have like a little bit of extra sound going on.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one. So this one's a still. I think this is the final still actually, but they did produce like a making of, which I thought was quite cool. So this was one of the only renders to actually submit something like this, where they had like a behind the scenes with even like the little janky concept art and stuff like that, which I thought was quite cute. And yeah, I think this is a really nice idea as well. Like this is a good render. It looks like the cat's probably photoshopped in. As far as I can tell, there was no model or anything of the cat, but it blends in really well. Like I did look at this at first and I was thinking like, is this mostly painted or is this 3D? Like the whole scene. And then I found this video that they'd also posted where they actually put it together. But it is blended quite nicely. I think the composition's a little bit crowded, which kind of lets it down.
Agree.
It doesn't need to have, you know, there's like a sun up there, and then there's Earth in the background, and then there's the lander and everything else, and then the cat. There's a lot going on here, and the fact that the cat is looking away from the composition kind of draws your eyes over to that side and away from like the main focal point.
Yeah, very true. I think like this was very, very cute, like, you know, with the work in progress stuff. So I really like extra points for that, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite crowded. But also, this is what I would call more of like a diorama type composition, which when it's a bit crowded, it's a little bit difficult to kind of look at because, as you're saying, like well, the way I would describe it is it doesn't necessarily feel as realistic because it looks like everything is kind of at the same distance. Like that background part of the terrain where it kind of spikes up in the middle feels the same distance as the planet. Like I can just imagine them there in the 3D space, just kind of sitting next to each other. I think there's a certain amount to do with the lighting about that as well. Because with renders like this, I think less can definitely be more if it looks good. So yeah, probably take a lot of that stuff out, find a way to make the terrain look like it's going on for longer. You probably don't need the sun there as well because it's quite rare that you'll be looking directly at the sun in kind of space things like this. But that would also probably give you a good excuse to do some nice rim lighting as well, like if the light is kind of off screen. So yeah, but I do like the little details about the idea. So like even just the little sections for the cat ears kind of on the spacesuit there, I think it's really cute. So I like that they've spent a lot of, you know, time on that.
That does look really good. I like the fact you can see where the light's actually like hitting the fur as well. I don't know if that's a particle system or if that's been painted in after. I can't see from here. But the other thing that's a little bit weird to me is the fact that the sun should be behind the Earth, but the Earth is being lit like it's lit front on. Like if we were looking at this, you wouldn't see the Earth at all because it would be completely in shadow. Because the side that would be lit would obviously be the other side.
Yeah.
So
I suppose, Yeah, exactly. It's a bit difficult to see exactly how things are placed in 3D
Yeah.
space from looking at this.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it's like it's the diorama thing, isn't it? It's like a staged. It feels like it has no parallax, basically.
Yeah.
Like if you move that camera, you know everything would just completely fall apart. There's no other shot where that would line up, which isn't always a bad thing. I've faked stuff like that a lot, but you do have to be really careful that people can't see the strings and that you're not giving away that that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there might all be just animations from now on. That's a really strong contender for me as well. That was really epic.
Yeah, I like that one. The planetary scenes where you can see like just the planets and kind of the light hitting off them, they look a lot more realistic than a lot of the kind of other entries.
Yeah, I agree.
I also appreciate like the little details like the volumetrics as they're kind of launching through the planet. You can see kind of you know how they're kind of flying by, even though the little panel details as they're kind of hitting off. It doesn't necessarily feel totally realistic. I think the spaceship maybe feels a bit out of place in a few of the scenes, especially the ones where you got like the nice planet and it's kind of coming in front of it, because the planets look so realistic and the spaceship doesn't necessarily look as realistic. But yeah, kind of just as a nice cinematic piece, I think this is a really nice entry. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think the ship is a little bit stylized, which is a weird choice when everything else is so realistic. But there's so many things done right with this. The sound design's great, especially the noise of all the little metal pieces and the fact you can actually see things like coming off the rocket as it's going up. There's like plates and things like that actually look realistically like they're sort of jiggling loose, which is actually really hard to get that to look right. I don't know if that's been hand animated or if it's some sort of physics or whatever. The volumetrics look great as well. I bet that took a while to render, unless that's Embergen or something, which it might be at least for the simulation, but I don't know if it is for the rendering. It looks pretty good though. It looks pretty good. That's definitely a strong contender for me. I like the shot behind the tree line where you see it going up. I'll see if I can find that. That was one of my favorite shots in this whole competition, to be honest. This one.
Yeah.
I think that looks great. The pacing on it's fantastic. I love this effect as well, where you've got like the atmospheric heating. It's like really sort of building speed, and you get that impression like it's really like building up to something here as it leaves, and then it goes quiet. I think this one's really great.
There was something I was thinking while watching this, which is it reminds me a lot of like a Bethesda game cinematic.
Yeah.
Because like when you look at like the Starfield trailers for the new Starfield game coming out, or even back to like the kind of Fallout for like kind of cinematics and stuff, they have the exact same kind of feeling to it. But like some parts look really realistic, but like the effects are just kind of below that uncanny valley kind of thing where you can tell they're kind of a bit off, but all of it together looks really cool. So I don't really know how else to describe it. It has like a very Bethesda feel to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Some parts are a little bit off, but the rest of it, like all together, feels really good. So yeah, I mean, I do like this entry. I think it's a strong contender so far.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. So the next one.
Hello? We need help.
Control, alert 1, splash 1, repeat, splash 1.
Hello? Is anyone out there?
Take personal security precautions to avoid becoming a victim of an attack. Avoid crowded public areas and gatherings. Do not travel into areas affected by the attack or in a known area of elevated virus activity.
I thought that was very cool. It's really well made, especially the shots at the start with the like the astronaut tumbling and things.
Yeah.
I think this is like a teaser trailer for like a bigger project, which would make
Right, okay.
sense because it's hard to tell what's actually supposed to be going on here.
Yes.
I think that's a really big weak point for this, is the fact that I don't really know what I'm supposed to be watching here. It looks like maybe an alien invasion or something, but I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I was feeling that. It kind of feels like they're trying to get across some story, and they're doing it quite well because they're kind of balancing like all the sound effect elements and kind of tense snippets of stuff going on. But we never really get any more clues about that because it ends quite abruptly. But then again, I suppose they didn't have much time, like 2 weeks, I guess, to do something like this, unless it is part of a larger project.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't have a note about this wrote down, but I'm pretty sure this was like called teaser trailer for something else. So this is probably something that's been worked on for a while.
All right, interesting. I thought it was all quite nice, but just that last shot where this ship type thing, whatever it's supposed to be, kind of comes into the planet, felt a little bit unbelievable, I guess, because it's just one single object just going down like that, and there's not really much else going on. It just, maybe that could have been worked on a bit, but yeah, overall I kind of like the ominous vibe of it.
I think also on that shot you're talking about at the end here, it's really hard to get a sense of scale, and everything looks kind of tilt shift. Because if this is a huge like spaceship or whatever, well, these skyscrapers and things shouldn't be this out of focus. So it makes it look like a miniature. It's very hard to tell that this is supposed to be like some huge object. Okay, so I think that one's really fun.
Yeah,
I like that it does like some storytelling in there, and I think the design of it's really cool. The fact that they went for something very stylized.
Yeah, I really like that one. It feels kind of like, one of those Pixar animated shorts, like that's kind of at the beginning of some films. It had that vibe to it because it does tell a whole story, kind of. Even the little thing like the decoded fish on like the side of the ship.
Yeah,
I like that one a lot, actually.
yeah, I
It's
agree.
very strange.
I love that one.
Exactly what I thought. It reminds me a lot of like a Pixar short, or like the ones that they used to put on, like with Scrat at the start of Ice Age movies, like something like that, where you get this little self-contained story, and even like the actual look of it kind of looks like it could be like a modern animated like family movie, basically.
Yeah. I like that's might be one of my favorites so far, actually.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong contender for me.
Yeah.
I'll move on to the next one.
Are these from your recent competition?
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
We're about halfway through the entries at the moment. So that's another really fun one with a great idea.
Yeah, I love that. Like, yeah, props for idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely one of the strongest ideas that I had in the competition. The
yeah,
execution's pretty good as well, mostly, but there's a few things I think probably let that down. The actual effect of like the planet on fire or whatever, I didn't think looked that great, and there was a lot of rendering artifacts as well. That's what it looked like denoising artifacts in the background, which I do give a little bit of leeway to because I know that people didn't have too long to do this, and depending on the sort of hardware you're using, it might take a long time to render that out.
yeah,
But
true.
it does let it down a little bit because it's a fairly simple scene. You shouldn't really have that much noise in that shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So it's just like one simple camera pan as well. Yeah, I think the idea is that there's the strongest part of the century. I think it'll be
Yeah.
fun. Like, I imagine that's the person's kid.
Hmm.
It'd be a bit weird if it was someone else's kid. Like, and it'll be kind of fun, I suppose, like when they grow up a bit, like, to be able to see that animation again in the future. So I like, yeah, I like the kind of story behind it. But then again, I feel like the last entry probably had more story. It was more self-contained in that way. This is just more like a kind of funny viral gimmick, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the idea, but maybe there could be a bit more to it.
Yeah, I do. I'd liked a few of the little touches as well, like the days without accidents counter, like resetting
Yes,
to
that was
zero.
nice.
That was quite nice as well, and
Yeah.
like the crayon writing on the window as well as the shot pans out. There were some nice little touches to it.
Yeah.
That's another cool
2
one.
weeks. 2
Two,
weeks.
2x. It's crazy, isn't it? Like
I know that. Yeah, that's a really, really good one. Love that.
when I was going through these entries, I was like, I had a few hundred, I think, altogether. And this list, this like short list, which isn't very short, ended up just getting longer and longer because something like that would come up like, oh, well, I have to put that in. There's no way that's not going to make the short list. Like, it's so well done. Like, it's got a nice narrative to it. All the shots look really good. The rendering quality on this one's great as well.
Yeah.
And like the little subtle things like the effect on the light coming up and the timing of the mechanisms and things when they change is all just spot on.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really good example of how you don't necessarily need much complexity. Because, like, if you look in a few of these shots, like, the mesh content of a lot of this isn't actually that complex.
Yeah.
Like, what really makes this good is good lighting and good cinematography. Like, there are some really, really well framed shots in this animation. And it really carries stuff forward. It all just kind of feels like it's properly post processed as well. It's got this kind of like soft but cinematic vibe to it with kind of limited palettes. I really like
Yeah.
it. Like, yeah, it's very well thought out. This person has a good sense of like the continuity of the entire thing happening at once.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thematically, I think it works really well that the only colors in pretty much every shot is like gray and green. So
Yeah.
you're supposed to have this balance between like the very cold, futuristic metal and the actual last bit of plant life still being left. Like even in this shot, the logo is green, The picture on the background has like a green tinge to it, and then obviously the plants itself, and then everything else is just grey, like a grey and cream. I think that's really nice. Like obviously very
Yeah.
well thought out color palette.
Yeah, it really shows when you can tell that the artist has actually properly thought about each of those things. So yeah, well maybe this is my new favorite one. Jeez, they just keep coming.
I know, right?
Are you paying much attention to the orchestral and the sound that's put into these as well to make it a really complete shot? Because this and the fish one that I've seen so far are absolutely complete productions. They're not just a
Yeah.
CG shot. They are a mini. They are a short film essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have paid some attention to it throughout the entries because before you got here, I think we made some comments about somewhere that it was missing as well, and it does make a big difference. It feels maybe a
Huge.
bit maybe a bit unfair if we're comparing like the ones with them to the ones without, because
Hmm.
obviously when they're making them in isolation, right? So they don't really have anything to go
Yeah.
against. But yeah, it does make a really big difference. Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, of course, like this one did pay really good attention to that. So yeah.
So I thought that was that very much reminded me of the sort of thing you would like come across as an Instagram reel or something like that. It has a really
Yeah,
nice vibe
no,
to
you
it
mean.
though. Like this guy just chilling out, drinking a beer, watching like the world burn.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say that nice vibe to it. Yeah. I mean, and it's always fun watching stuff blow up, right?
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, I'm not sure if it'll be like a, winning contender, but I like it. It's a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was worth a mention, and I like the little rover as well. That's just like minding its own business, doing stuff throughout that, and then kind of like pops its head up halfway through. I thought that was very cool. I also like the fact that you didn't have any noise coming from the explosion, which obviously you wouldn't hear anything, especially for a few minutes until things started probably hitting the moon as well.
Yeah.
So you have this weird effect where you have no sound at all, but you have this like horrific thing going on, almost like you get with like a nuclear blast when you see one from so far away. For the first few seconds, you just don't hear a thing.
Yeah, that's true. I also like the absurdity of it. Like, why is there like a sun chair on the moon? And also, he's holding a beer. How is he drinking the beer?
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. It's ridiculous.
I like the fact he puts his visor down just before impact as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's cool.
it's good. It's a good vibe. Yeah. Nice.
Entry into the Martian PGA, 400 credits. New titanium alloy driver, 180 credits. A lesson in orbital mechanics, priceless.
That's another fun one. I like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people made like fun renders. I think, from what I remember, I think they said they didn't model the spacesuit, but they modeled everything else.
Right. Okay. Yeah, there are a few little kind of technical rendering things, like when they did the swing. I think the actual golf club kind of moved away from the hands a little bit at one point, like kind of clipped for it.
Oh, I
And
didn't notice that.
yeah, you can have a little
Let's have a
look
look.
quickly. I think it's on the final swing as it goes off. Let's have a quick look. There we go, just above the fingers. I don't know if you saw that then.
Yeah, I saw that. It
So-
kind of floats.
Yeah, but it's also very, very absurd. Like it would take I mean, first of all, a human wouldn't be able to do that, and it would take months and months and months and months for it to like cut sperm.
I was like, he'd
Putting
be
all
stood
that,
there for 18 months. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So putting all that aside, I think it was fun. I like these funny ones. Exactly. It feels again like a reel, like something you just watch quickly and go,
Yeah.
kind of move on. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Other than the technical issues, I thought some of the actual shots were really nice. Like in terms of composition, especially this
Yeah.
drone shot where it carries around this.
Yeah, true.
I thought that was a pretty cool shot. Some of the materials probably could use some work. They look a little bit basic in the background and things. Everything looks a bit blocky as well. But yeah, like the renders like this are obviously more about the idea than anything else. And I do like there's some nice attention to detail stuff, like the dust and everything.
Yeah, true. I mean, for that shot especially, it doesn't really feel like there is an actual background kind of going on because
Yeah.
it kind of clips off so short. But yeah, what you're saying about the drone is interesting. I like how the camera kind of pans out with that one shot because
Yeah.
I don't think many people would think of doing that. So yeah, again, I feel like the ideas behind this are probably the main carrying point for this entry. Yeah.
It almost seems effortless how you play with love. Human mind walk the field where the pride did not strike. I ran through the gates of ammunition land, trying to find a love under heavy fire.
Okay, so that's another one that obviously is going for a really strong storytelling element.
Yeah.
And I purposely put this one last because it's like the theme of the whole thing. It's like it's the end of the world. So as far as I can tell, the idea here is like Earth's being destroyed somehow, and that was all the buildings and things being sort of evacuated from Earth, and they're just like picking up and leaving and taking everything. And this guy's having a beer and watching that. So I like the ones that have a strong narrative to them. So this was definitely a contender, and I think the rendering on this is actually really nice as well. The explosion, even though it's kind of behind the window frame, which I thought was a weird move. I would have made that bigger and probably had it more prominent because it's actually almost easy to miss.
Yeah.
And this this weird frame thing that came up at the end, I probably wouldn't have done that either. It's supposed to look, I suppose, like a newspaper or something.
Yeah, I suppose it kind of adds the whole context for it. Like, oh yeah, you might have kind of picked up on the clues that the world's ending and we're all kind of moving away. But this is actually solidifying it. But I agree. Like, you probably could have done without that. It might have been better to have more kind of diegetic references to it, so things actually in the scene. But they've actually done a pretty good job with that because I was paying attention, like even like the little names like Air's End, like there's no air here, kind of like for, like the name of the
Yeah, I saw
pub
that.
or whatever. Even just like the little details, like the kind of moisture marks on the table there and everything. So it feels like they've paid a lot of attention in the foreground, maybe not so much in the background, because even like that large spacecraft coming along didn't seem particularly realistic,
Yeah.
So it feels like there's a bit of an off balance element, but I really like the vibe because it feels like the kind of thing that would be like the intro to like a BioShock game. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's got this weird somber stuff, feels a bit like it's going wrong element to it. So it's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that. It's like, it very much feels like it's the start of a story, even though it's all about the end. It actually feels like this is the beginning of something else. But yeah, I really like the materials on this as well. I think look great. Like even just the little texture details, like the scratches on the Wi-Fi sticker coming off on the window, things like that's really it's always a nice touch when you've got a foreground element, especially like this where it's literally on screen the entire time. He's looking out window. You have to put the extra time in.
Yeah, I completely agree. But yeah, interesting.
Okay, so that was all the entries then. Do you have some favorites in mind?
I do. I have the two that really stuck out to me. Our nice cohesive Pixar short with the fish, but then also followed very strongly by our plant one. I don't know how else to describe it, but the one where we were super impressed with the cinematography of it. And
That
just
one reminded me a lot of like a dystopian Wall-E.
Yeah.
yes,
A more dystopian Wall-E, if that makes sense.
it's an interesting idea. They kept the idea consistent all the way through, and it's super well produced. And like it's all just consistently really nice to watch. Like so it feels like it would be done by a high quality production, with a large budget. So that would be my favorite one, I would say.
Yeah. For me, my favorites are the Predator shot, the dancing aliens, that
Yeah.
takeoff shot, the really cinematic takeoff shot with the
Yeah, you like
rocket.
the tree scene from that one especially,
Yeah.
didn't you?
The fish and the one with the plant.
Yeah.
That's my short list.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, how are you gonna judge this then?
well, do you want to watch some of those again quickly, and we'll
Yeah.
make a decision on this based on we'll round it down to like 3 or something like that. We'll make a decision on it.
Yeah, sure thing. So like my two overlapped with your list. So if you pick the ones you want to show, I think that'll be all right.
Yeah, we can round it down to those two then, and just watch those two again.
It's up to you. Yeah,
and-
Michael. Hold on, Michael. You didn't see all of them, did you?
I haven't seen all of them. Out of the ones I did see, definitely the fish is top with me at the moment. I love the Pixar one. I think the other one had far more of a story to it, and it was the pacing I thought was very good throughout. It had a change of scene, and it had a lot of anticipation in it. It had foreshadowing as well as the anticipation, and then the delivery as well. The only thing I didn't particularly like with it was the sky shot. I saw the little flash. Obviously, that's the impact of it, but I thought it took far too long without some sort of sound effect or something to let you know something was falling.
Yeah.
The classic pew, boom, as it comes down. I think that bit could have been a lot shorter, and they'd have probably saved a lot of rendering time because of it as well. So yeah, I think the fish one is. I mean, it's a hair's ahead of the dystopian Wall-E one for me. Anyway.
Okay, let's watch those two again, and we'll see what we think. So I can't actually remember where these are. Oh, this is the fish one, isn't it?
It is funny, but yeah, now like when you mention it again, that delay time between the flash and it coming down, it's quite long.
It's about twice the length it should have been, in my opinion. I didn't notice the first. Oh, I think I subconsciously noticed it. The eyes of all the characters
Are
kind
exactly
of bring it all.
the same.
They're all the same eyes,
Yeah.
so it brings that all together.
I didn't notice that. There was some nice touches I noticed that time though. I didn't before, like the way that the fish kind of bobs, almost like it would when it's swimming, and the fact that times up with the music as well. Like the way it like bobs its head forward. I did notice that the first time I watched it. That's a nice touch.
There is one thing I don't really like about it, like the shot where it's kind of doing like the close up of the face. I don't know if I should judge this too harshly, but like where it's doing that kind of that long kind of focal length of the face, it reminds me of like these Source filmmaker YouTube videos. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these kind of these comedy animations, and it just kind of like screams low quality in a moment like that. But I don't want to put it down too much just because of that. But it just made me think Source filmmaker like immediately when I saw that. But yeah, I mean, I do like it as a whole. Like, I tried not to laugh while watching it again, so that's probably a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one? Okay, for me, I think that's the winner. I think that's my favorite. I'm watching that whole thing through, and I can't pick fault with anything really. Nothing that isn't just unbelievably nitpicky. Like the
Yeah.
After watching through them again, I think just the fact that they've got the scene, the pacing, the music, and everything all in there, consistency grading amongst all of the scenes as well.
yeah,
The fact that as you said, I can't pick a specific fault without starting getting nitpicky. Versus the fish one, it made me laugh. It was well framed. It had consistency and everything else. But then it had like that really long frame, and it's like if you're going to judge a winner, I think it's fair to say this one trumps it technically completely because of that.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think
I agree.
this one I did notice on the fish one as well when I first watched it that it has that long pause. This one does also have quite a long pause on the space station outside, but I can forgive it because it's an entire space station that's being modeled for one shot. So it's okay to linger
Yeah.
on that for a second because this is like if it's 2 seconds or instead of one, you know what I mean? It's an entire. You kind of want to show that off a little bit, and you shouldn't really make shots usually around just showing off your hard work because nobody cares. But
Yeah.
it's okay to indulge it a little bit sometimes because it is just actually an interesting thing to look at. And I feel like if it came up for like a much briefer duration, I would have been like, oh, missed that part. You know what I mean? Like I was enjoying looking at that.
And we now
True.
know where all the poly budget went and why the corridors existed for the rest of it.
Yeah.
About the pacing, though, I think there is something interesting. I'm not saying that it has or hasn't been applied here, but I feel like some slightly extended scenes are a benefit in like filmmaking for setting the pacing for what's to come
Mhm.
sometimes. And those corridor scenes were quite slow, but then quite like purposeful, like afterwards. I feel like maybe, say, for example, if the space station scene was much shorter than we expected, and then we got to the corridor scene, we might be saying the opposite, saying the corridor scene felt way too long.
Exactly.
Like, so I feel like there's probably something about the balance of pacing there. Like the outside scene might be a bit too long, but I do feel like there's something quite interesting about setting the pacing with like the duration of certain scenes. But it's a very delicate balance to get right because like we saw in some of the earlier entries, sometimes you can like have them all hang on for way too long, you know.
Yeah.
But I feel like they did a pretty good job of balancing that here, especially combined with all the other elements, you know, the post processing, the audio, the composition, you know, it's all I think it's all great. Like
Yeah.
so yeah.
So on the really long scene of the space station, have I just missed there like being a small pixel going up to it or something from the surface? I did wonder that with the compression, because I was looking for it this time around to see whether it was that long because it was showing the thing going up to the ship or entering the ship
No,
or something.
there
No,
doesn't seem to be anything. It's not that long, to be
no,
fair. It's just
no.
I figured it was worth mentioning that it does hang on this for a few seconds, considering we were criticizing the other one for it. But like I said, I mean, this is a great shot, and if it wasn't, Curtis is right. Like if this was much quicker takes up until this point, it kind of makes you anticipate that the rest of it's going to be like rapid fire. And then when you get to something that you need to pay attention to, like the messaging on the side or whatever, your mind just doesn't want to like take all that in because you're anticipating having to quickly look at things and then move on, if that makes sense. You know, it's the difference between if you're watching like one of our videos, if you've been watching like Mr. Beast or something like that, where it's just every 15 seconds, every 10 seconds, it's like a new frame, new conversation, someone saying something else. You know, it's hard to go from one of those things to the other because your mind gets in this frame of reference of like, okay, it needs to be really fast now. We need to be thinking, we need to concentrate on everything someone's saying and then move on. And you don't want to linger on stuff, and vice versa. You know, if you've been watching something that's very chilled out, you don't want to watch something like that because it's like, whoa, okay, calm down. I can't take all this in.
True. So I guess we have our winner.
I think so. Yeah, I think I can't fault this for anything. At the end of the day, like I was really scrutinizing this one earlier, and the quality of the lighting, the textures, the animation, even little touches like at the very start when the light goes on the plant, it doesn't immediately light up the plant. It wanders for a second, it misses, and then it moves on to the plant, but it's very subtle. But small attention to detail, things like that, combined with a really nice storyline where it's obvious what's supposed to be going on. Like, this just wins on all accounts for me. There's nothing I can fault this for.
There's even something I would call like the softness of lighting, which is more than I think just like the radius of how lights kind of dissipate. There's like the shot where it's looking at the door, like, and it's got kind of the plant in front of it, but like how the light kind of stretches over the wall and stuff. If you can find that, it might be easy to... So like the softness of how the light blends, it's got a bit of that kind of like Overwatch cinematic short vibe to it. Don't know if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how to describe it because I haven't really studied it that much, but it's where the light can feel as soft as like the characters sometimes. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of exploring that, and it's a really, really difficult look to achieve if you're not used to kind of playing with surface materials and lighting and how they react with each other and stuff like that. So there's some mastery kind of hidden away in here, I think, that kind of deserves the winning position.
I can nitpick something. Go back to the planet scene with the space station. It took me a while to realize because it's such a beautiful scene.
This shot.
Notice the planet is lit differently to the space station.
Oh yeah.
So the lighting doesn't match there. But you know what? I had to sit there and go, something's not right about this. It's beautiful. What's wrong? What's wrong? Oh yeah, the sun is in two places.
Yeah.
Although there could be two stars, but then the other side should be lit up as well.
The other side should be lit up as well. Yeah, the only way you would get... I don't know, because it's possible, I suppose, that this middle shadow here is a shadow from something else. Like being cast onto it.
There is also the question of, I'm pretty sure this has happened many times in AAA budget cinema release films as well. And I think it's because sometimes there's a question of A, will people realize, and B, how much does it contribute to the look of a shot? And I think it's easy for us to sit and kind of assess that, but I think sometimes it doesn't really matter that much. And that might be a controversial take, but yeah, I mean, it never phased us when we watched it.
No.
We had to sit and criticize it. Yeah,
it had to be sat on the screen for like 10 seconds solid. There it is.
Yeah, I mean, even with the length of this shot, none of us initially picked that up, I suppose. Partly because most of these shots seem to have some like vignetting around it. It's naturally like this corner's the part that gives it away that it really doesn't match, I suppose. but most of the shots seem to have that anyway. Like here, everything's been composed in a way where you get the darkness around the sides anyway. But yeah, that's not a big deal for me. It certainly doesn't change how I feel about it.
Definitely isn't a deal breaker for me either. No.
That's another one of those nitpicks, which we've mentioned before you came on, Michael. There's been a few other shots where the lighting on something really doesn't make sense, like that. Was it the Space Cat one?
Yeah, I think
where it had
yeah.
completely different lighting on the Earth. This one.
So there's an important point to make about that.
Is that even the Earth, or is that a lens flare?
No, that's lens flare. The Earth is to the left a bit.
Oh yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So the main point I made about this is that it's difficult to understand its position in 3D space, which is why kind of the lighting's a bit odd. I think that's the more important point than the lighting itself. When we're comparing this to this final one that we've picked as our winner, even though the lighting is coming from different locations, I don't have trouble understanding where it is in 3D space. Like the lighting is affecting the planet in a different way, but I still know it's far behind the space station, even though the lighting is different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of more important for me. And that's something that I think a lot of the other kind of entries have struggled with, because it all feels like they're either like cardboard cutouts, or there was an earlier one as well where we complained about the length of the shots being too long. The one with like the shadow coming over Jupiter. Everything felt like it was kind of out of position. A lot of that is to do with lighting and framing and stuff. But this one, even though we're nitpicking it as the lighting coming from different sources, I still don't have trouble understanding that physicality. So that for me is kind of one of the reasons why it doesn't faze me that much. So yes, get other people, like, other people may have different takes about it. That's perfectly fine, because I feel like there's a kind of, since we're breaking away from realism there with the lighting, technically you might call this stylized or a stylistic choice. So again, like, people are going to have different subjective opinions about that.
And ultimately, it's a backdrop for the space station. It's an artistic decision at that point. They might have said, "Screw it, it looks shit if I," because the planet would be lit completely off of screen. It would just be a black blob.
Yeah, you always have to use a bit of artistic license for that. I mean, obviously, you've got visible stars here. If you were this close to a very bright metallic object, you would not be able to expose the stars as well. But you don't question that, because it's an artistic choice. And what I've found from doing so many recreations of movie shots is there's so much fudging going on that you don't even realize. Directors and VFX artists do this constantly in movies, where things are like faked, basically, where there'll be
smoke and mirrors all over the place.
For instance, on the Jurassic Park thing I did, I couldn't get it to properly line up, and I'm pretty sure that they used a different focal length for the T-Rex compared to what they used to actually shoot this thing, and it doesn't stand out. You wouldn't notice that, but it's the only way that I could figure out to get it all to compose properly together. I didn't realize that until after the shot was done, that mine didn't quite match at the right scale, because I think they just went, sort of just use a different focal length. So I was trying to do a shot before from Lord of the Rings, which I still might do at some point, but there's a zoomed in shot of Minas Tirith at one point. It's where Gandalf's riding to Minas Tirith, and you see these towers on the front. I was trying to figure out where the hell on the model these towers were and try and line up the shot, and I couldn't figure out which side of Minas Tirith it was looking for. And I realized after ages, this isn't actually part of the model. They've just stuck a few random towers in front of the camera because it's a nice composition, and there's nowhere in the city that actually looks like this, which is why I couldn't find anything like that, because it's just one shot, and someone just went, screw it, just get some random tower models we've got and just throw them in front of the camera because it'll look better.
I want to make a point about this lighting as well, because I imagine there may be some people that kind of think about what we've said about it and think, well, actually, no, like there aren't any kind of big budget films that kind of play with lighting in this weird way, and we're just trying to justify this. I can give you one good example: Thor Ragnarok. So they tried doing something interesting in that film. There's a couple of scenes where they experimented with this kind of alternate post lighting thing. So there's a scene in slow motion where these kind of Valkyries, which are these warriors on these flying horses, are kind of going into an attack position, and it's all kind of in slow motion as they're flying through the air. But as they're doing it, the lighting is constantly changing. It's not realistic in any way. They're just doing it for a really cool cinematic effect. So they're just experimenting with having like a really cool shot stylized, which is quite different from the rest of the film, where it's all
Yeah.
kind of much more diegetic and natural. But they've done it just for stylistic effect because it'll look better than the alternative. So there are places where that does happen.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing.
I know the shot you're talking about. It happens a lot. If you look at, I mean, Hollywood lighting in general, you know, like, if you look at the way that a set is lit compared to anywhere else in the real world, like, it's just completely ridiculous. You'll have somebody indoor in like a normal room like this, and they'll have like a strong rim light, a purple rim light. I'm like, where's that light come from? That would never happen.
Yeah.
Not unless you were in a studio or something like this where you've got random rim light, which I put there purposely for the same reason. To make it visually interesting. But, you know, like, it doesn't matter. You're trying to make a nice shot at the end of the day.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, so there we have it. We have a winner. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you to Scan and Nvidia for making this competition possible. I want to say thank you to everybody who participated, even if you didn't get your entries in time. I know this was a very tight deadline, and people have lives at the end of the day. I'm so impressed with how much work people managed to produce and the quality of work people produced. I also want to say a really big thank you to Michael and Curtis for giving up their time to help judge the competition. Finally, congratulations to anybody who made the final 20, in particular Mr. Glow TM for actually winning the competition. I'll be in touch in the next few days about sorting out your prize and getting all your address details and things like that, so be on the lookout for that message. Thanks for watching, guys, and thanks for taking part if you did. I'm really looking forward to the next competition that'll be down the line in the future, but until then, see you later.